was very liberal.
Was it?
Yes. What's her name? Who's going Tubman? Who's going to be
yeah.
on the $20 bill?
Mm-hmm.
She was a Republican, carried the handgun. But of course, Abe Lincoln, who was also a Republican.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May the 4th Finance Committee meeting. We have a few things on the agenda for tonight. The first will be inviting our esteemed town manager up to discuss the latest state of the proposed fiscal year 17 budget. Town manager Rick LaFawn.
Hi. No, we haven't. Katie Coleman. Nice to meet you.
Yes, I do have some paperwork to distribute, and I do apologize for you not getting it in advance. That's completely my fault. I'd like to blame Deb, but I can't do that. I'm not sure. The order, I guess the first thing I'll do is distribute, based upon the agenda, is the updated FY17 budget working document. And if I just maybe pass them around that way and let you, and I will explain that again in a moment, once those get around. The second document is in light of both the end of FY16 budget year and planning ahead in terms of our use of free cash for next year. We propose that it all break down in terms of our special town meeting that's coming up. And so I will, again, once you see it, we can, I don't want to get too far ahead until you have it in front of you, so. And so as to, on your agenda, the selectmen will be presumably voting to accept the special and annual town meeting warrants on Tuesday night. The draft's already been sent to town council for review for any technicalities. So, I'm sorry, Monday night, so I suspect by Tuesday, you will have a copy of the warrant, as it may, although it may need some amendments the town council may recommend, you'll have the substance of it. However, most of the substance of it financially is actually on the worksheet, so, I'm cheating, I know, so. So this document you have in front.
Before we
Yes.
move to that, do we have a, I would assume we have an idea at this point of approximately how many articles are on the warrant, we might need to bring in for discussions before?
Yes.
Might have financial impact.
Yes, that is correct. In fact, if you look at this summary page that it's actually entitled.
Of course, I'm jumping
actually
ahead on my own agenda.
That's okay, but I think I actually am
We brought
looking
it
at it
up, so.
outdated. May I have a copy of what I
Here.
distributed? I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay, I grabbed extras for the people who aren't
Yeah,
here, so. you
okay.
can hold on.
If you look at this document, I'm sorry, your question specifically, I'm going to start answering the wrong question. I just know it.
Warrant articles.
Warrant articles, yes. The left-hand column, essentially is free cash. This is how we would propose the free cash breakdown. And most of the warrant articles, financial warrant articles, are actually, you see here, putting money into our stabilization account, which we didn't do last year, putting money into our OPEB account. Again, we didn't do that last year. And then the capital plan, the items we propose to pay for through free cash in our capital plan. Though that is a big part of what you're going to see for financial articles. It's not a very long special annual town meeting warrant. It's not. There is some other articles. Collective bargaining, proposals to fund collective bargaining contracts that are not completed yet. So there are some other financial ramifications. But in terms of warrant articles, in addition to the budget article itself, The left-hand column is pretty much all you're going to see.
Can I ask what the OPEB is? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I was
that-
actually going to ask.
That refers
clarified
to
that for
other
people.
post-employment benefits, which basically, what that really comes down to is funding health insurance and primarily health insurance and other post-employment benefits, i.e. retirement, which is a line item in the budget down the road, because in theory, we're accruing a liability right now, but we're not putting away funds to pay for that liability. So some can argue that this isn't really feasible to put enough money away to pay for post-employment benefits, but it's very helpful in terms of your financial standing and for bond ratings, et cetera. And of course, in principle, it never hurts to put money away. So, but no, you wouldn't know that, yeah. So,
That was actually something I was going to make sure
Oh, good.
that we clarified
yes,
for you.
okay. And some of you may be aware, we do have, the selectmen have had a policy for several years in terms of the use of free cash. And one of the things we'll be doing is proposing to balance our snow and ice deficit the end of this fiscal year instead of carrying it into next fiscal year, and doing that with free cash. And then the balance, again, the policy that they've had for several years is that 60% of the stabilization, of the free cash would be appropriated to stabilization. 10% of the remaining amount would be appropriated to, for OPEB, and then the balance could be used for capital. So that's, again, we deviated from that a bit last year because of, the state of the state. So we'd like to get back to that this year.
Absolutely.
Although, and I'm not making this argument, but some could argue that most of you know, we do have, our bond rating was upgraded for the school project from a AA- to AA, so that's obviously very good for the town. That's already been done, so it's been suggested, well, we don't need to do this now. Well, that's not really the right attitude, okay? I mean, there are times when you can't do it. There's times when you can't, but,
It's like the player who gets the big contract and then slacks off. We don't really want to be that player.
I'm hoping to be that person someday. I don't see it coming. I don't see it coming. So that's a snapshot of what you're going to see on the annual town meeting warrant in terms of financial items that are not part of the budget. I'm sorry, not just between the special and the annual. The rest of the document, we are looking at how we're going to balance the current fiscal year budget, which is, as you know, typical at the end of the fiscal year. We need to move some funds around. And so the middle column, entitled Available Funds, are the funds that we've identified that are available for transfer to other line items. And then the right-hand column are those areas of the budget that will need some help prior to June 30th. So Article 3, I reference on the right, is the article on the special town meeting warrant to the menu to transfer items from one line item to another. So, and then there were separate individual articles that will also be on the special town meeting that are listed below. But effectively, it's moving money end of the fiscal year to cover our obligations. So, as you can see, by using, by adhering to the free cash policy, we'll obviously spend down the free cash that's available, putting some away and doing some capital. And we do obviously have enough, we believe, available funds to cover our end of fiscal year needs. That's one reason why we're recommending that for now you have a fairly small reserve fund left, that you maintain that, and we can, those items that have been brought forward to you as possible reserve fund transfers, that we transfer those through the special town meeting article rather than have the finance committee's reserve fund. In case we need to call a special town meeting on June 29th, if we need money, we've got to make sure it's there. So that's how it's shaping up down the stretch here.
So, as another point, especially for newer members, the available funds that we do not use to cover transfers, or
Yeah.
as transfers to cover the sort of balancing things out at the end
Right.
of the year, that goes into the next year's free cash.
That would become part of that's part of next year's free cash calculation, correct?
So-
Yes. Yes. So obviously, the good news is we feel we have some ability to do some, to get back to the policy with regard to stabilization and OPEB. It's obviously not gonna, doesn't save the day, but hopefully over time, we'll continue to chip away at our
Build that back up.
our reserves.
And I know at one point we asked this during the process, but do you know at least a ballpark of where the stabilization fund is
It's
right now?
about 1.1, a little under $1.2 million, yes. I was asked that same question by somebody last week, and I said 1.8, I forget who it was, but that was actually my off-the-cuff
Wishful thinking?
Stabilization and free cash total that I had in my head for obvious reasons, so, but it's a little under 1.2 million at the moment.
That's not including the Staples, the 291, right?
Correct. Not
Correct.
including anything on
That's
this sheet.
correct, yes.
This sheet would be what we're proposing at town meeting to be adding to it.
Now, this this doesn't have anything necessarily to do with the budget, except that to the extent that we retire our snow and ice deficit this year, we don't have to carry it into next year as a burden we're bringing into FY17 with us. So the budget summary document and the forecasting summary worksheet on the front contemplates retiring that debt in FY16 when it was incurred, so.
Why don't we move on to
I'd be happy
the
to.
updated budget
Yes.
document?
Yes.
It looks, the total expenses, total revenues looks a bit different than when we started this process.
A little bit different, yes. As I'm sure most of you are aware, the House of Representatives, House Ways and Means budget was a little bit more helpful for cities and towns. What was particularly helpful was the assessment side of the cherry sheet, which you see on the budget document on the last page. I'm sorry, there is a blank page in this budget document. That's nothing missing, it's just a, we're not hiding anything, that's just an error of our copy machine.
This page left intentionally.
I'm sorry?
This page left intentionally.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I wish, if I thought of that, I would have, but the last page, cherry sheet assessments, at $907,000, we had anticipated more, and in fact, in the governor's original budget proposal, that was a bit more. So between the House, both sides of the revenue and assessment side, we're in a little bit better position. Again, not substantial, but it helps. There's no question that it helps. And there's every reason to believe that, from what we're hearing, that's not going to be disrupted in any way. Obviously, one of the big issues for us this year was the reduction in our South Shore VOTEC assessment. That's a big help for us going forward. That would have caused some difficulty, particularly in light of almost a 15% increase in health insurance this year. I want to be careful when I speak to this, but obviously there's nothing that's going to happen for FY17, but there's no question that we feel obliged to take a deeper look at what our options might be going forward into FY18 and beyond. That there aren't a lot of options in the municipal marketplace, but there are some. And the most important thing, I think, is to know that at least we have appropriate knowledge that we're doing where we belong. And the Mayflower Health Group may be exactly the place for us based upon our claims, but there may be other options. So going into FY17, and we've our financial group and school superintendent and others we're all on the same page that we really have to take a better look at that, even if we have to try to engage some professional services to do that, so. But that combined with, I mean, the offset of our South Shore VOTAC assessment obviously was a godsend in light of that major increase this year, so.
Oh, don't be sorry. I just, this is more, you just pique curiosity as it relates to the Mayflower Group and the health insurance side. I know you've missed these questions. It really comes down to, as you look deeper, and I appreciate FOG and the school committee doing so, the challenge, of course, is going to be is, do you have any restrictions in collective bargaining that requires you to make sure you have a certain benefit level? And if so, do you know how many bargaining agreements that actually hits? And I guess how hindered are you by CBAs versus where you want to go?
The answer is yes, completely, and it's very difficult, yes. Right, it's any changes to plan design are all, I think you actually know the answer to the
I do.
question.
I just wanted to
But you're raising the issue, I know.
We have missed
Plan
these
des-
questions.
plan design changes are mandatory subject of collective bargaining. It's not a matter of sending a notice and saying in 30 days X is going to change. Those are mandatory subject of collective bargaining. So it can take a long time to change both plan design, and certainly to the extent that it may be the case, and I'm not predicting this is the way it's going to end up, but it may be that the Mayflower Health Group may not be our best option in general. It's almost inconceivable that anything we do won't be a mandatory subject of collective bargaining. And the reality is, we may find that, in fact, I'm not predicting it, but I would not be the least bit surprised to find out that, based upon our claims and other factors, we are where we belong.
No doubt. The only challenge would be is that it sounds great to be able to shop at, do plan design, and we can save a boatload of money, but the fact of the matter is going to be is that.
Correct. Yes, don't get your hopes up, because, like I said, it's really a matter of an obligation to know that where we belong. It wasn't that long ago that, and I'm sure some of you remember it, I won't, where the, almost every town in the county was in the old Plymouth County Health System, which was a county-run program. And going back, a decade or so, there were communities and groups that started to break off that, form their own groups. Some communities got out individually. So the Mayflower Health Group is really what was left of the old Plymouth County group. So it's not a given that the communities in the Plymouth that are remaining will kind of belong together. It could very well be that, different geographic areas of the Plymouth County that are still in the Mayflower Health Group don't really belong in the same health group together. We don't know that. Again, I'm not predicting that, but we don't know that. And at least it's important to at least know where you belong. And if I was a betting man, I'd say we probably find out we are where we belong, but there's a comfort level that I think we all have to have, especially, highlighted by a 15% increase does kind of break the inertia a little bit, even if we're doing everything we can do, so I'm going to say you can look forward to that, but I don't know that there's anything to look forward to. It's not out of the question we find out that based upon the claims of Abington employees, we've been chronically being subsidized by the rest of the group, and we should shut our mouths and keep it that way. So, you don't know what's going to happen when you go down the path, but you have to have the right knowledge. You have to have knowledge at least, so. Did I answer all your questions, Sean? I'm sorry. I know there was.
The simple matter would be is, yes, we're bound, and no, there's not going to be a bounty of savings.
Probably not.
And that's coming from me, by the way. I get paid
No,
on the word.
and the rates here, the Mayflower Health Group rates are competitive with any other municipal working group. That's not the issue. It's not the issue at all. It's just a matter of when this is a lot of money, and you should know that, why you're paying it, and what your claims tend to be versus that of the group you belong to, and vice versa.
And if I understood our previous discussions on it correctly, we had gone several years without a rate increase.
There were, yes, and.
So it's sort of
Right.
compiling but hitting us all at once.
That's correct, and which the rates were offset, increases were offset by surpluses that had been built up in the Mayflower Health Group. So again, That's the good thing, but to the extent that you're using surplus to decrease or to not increase rates, eventually it has to catch up to you if you're not doing other things with plan design or else. So again, there's no criticism here whatsoever. It's just a matter of, you want to be comfortable
Evaluation.
that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, that's all. And I'm not predicting that that's not the case, but it's too big a number to not at least assume that obligation. Okay.
Since we're spending time on clarifications for newer
Yes.
people, do you want to go into just a little bit of an explanation of what exactly the cherry sheet assessment is?
Sure.
I know that was useful for
Would
me,
catch
useful
me
for
off
me
guard.
when I was new.
Maybe that was my next question.
It would be helpful if I actually had a copy of what that is, of cherry sheet. Assessments are assessments that are, the state giveth, the state taketh away, and the cherry sheet is really the part of the recap sheet where the state assesses you for certain things, whether it's regional transportation, costs for regional transportation that they assess to each community, certain education costs that they assess to each community. So when the state provides a local aid assistance package that's put on, on the front page, on the back page of those types of assessments that they also have that take away from that. As well as, I think at the county, our county assessments are listed separately, as those are also on the cherry sheet, but that's more ministerial purposes. So the various assessments that the state uses to fund other things against, MBTA transportation, or those types of things, regional transportation, it would be obviously easier if I can provide you, email you a copy of the last year's, that itemizes that for you. I don't have an itemization with me, unfortunately, so. But that's essentially what it is. It's the offset to the local aid package where they assess you for, they taketh away, so.
Thank you.
And the document you have in front of you isn't substantially different. Obviously, one of the things we've done is we have clarified with the school administration, and I believe, I don't want to speak for the school superintendent, but I know he's spoken at least to his budget subcommittee. This budget still maintains the school operational costs, operational piece of the budget at the same rate as it has in the several
Same
historically. Yes, thank you. That's approximately 68% of the municipal budget when you exempt the fixed costs, as like health insurance. You'll see at the end of the budget, retirement, and other fixed costs, health insurance and the assessments. When you take away the fixed costs, when you just look at the operational budget per se, it still maintains the school expenditure at about 68% of the overall municipal budget. So, again, it's not a great budget, but it's not a budget where this will not be a budget that requires layoffs. The weakness in this budget right now, from my standpoint, is that we have a couple collective bargaining agreements that we're hoping to finalize before town meeting. You'll see Tuesday morning, I'm not going to spill the beans on everything, but there are articles that we have drafted to fund collective bargaining agreements. The agreements that are outstanding that will very likely be part of that will be the fire union, clerical, and library. So obviously the fire union is a substantial cost, and again, it's just because it's a sizable department. It's not 1% is approximately $31,000 on a fire contract. So we're trying to finalize that, and so within what you see here, we are still trying to squeeze some costs out, particularly out of the fixed cost areas, to see if we can. And the fire union, and I'm probably saying too much, has really worked hard crunching numbers with the fire chief to really define where some of these opportunities may lie. So as difficult as it is, there's certainly a spirit of cooperation, and that the fire union leadership has been willing to engage in. So we really would like to get this done, but unfortunately, it's not like we invent revenues to offset that. We don't do that. We only do that for my contract. So that is something we are still actively working on. I think the one thing that we had hoped to try to make some headway this coming fiscal year with a little more adequate snow and ice removal funding. That doesn't appear in here. On a personal level, as some of you may know, I have actually been concerned that the reserve fund, the Finance Committee's reserve fund, has been a little too modest, and that we should try and do something a little more aggressive there. But the only, I think, real budget priority that we're going to be able to address is we have maintained in here, even getting down to this $313 surplus. We're going to try to figure out what to do with. The local share of the grant the police have for hiring 2 community police officers, or school resource officers / community resource officers. One of the goals that the selectmen have, this, I don't think there's any question, and I think one of the staffing priorities in the town is the number of police officers the town has at the moment. So the chief has acquired a grant for 2 police officers, so funding our local share of approximately $50,000 is part of what's in the police budget this year. So obviously our goal is to maintain that. We're not going to lose out on the opportunity to start building back a police department staffing. The chief's goal, and I'm not saying it's our goal yet, but I think ours is a little more nebulous overall, just knowing we need some more police staffing, is to get back to approximately, we'll add about 6 additional permanent positions to a staffing level that existed approximately 15 years ago. It won't be perfect, but at least it probably provide a little bit of more opportunity for more detective work. Well, you've met with them, you've heard it. I think it's a very valid need that the town has, and what that department does, how much it does with the resources it has versus other communities is really quite impressive. So, but to the extent that there's been any real progress made in terms of FY16, going into FY17, that's probably the only area that I would highlight. The rest of it is as status quo as we can keep it, keeping positions in place. So, wish I had better news, but as you know, you've been around long enough to know you've heard a lot of worse news in the past too. So,
I'm gonna say, seeing this,
We're going on to
seemed
education.
like better news.
I'm sorry.
Silly question. Education. I mean, on your first page,
Yes.
and this is probably just how it's currently reported.
Yeah.
You had enticed us to look at the FY15 and 16 cherry sheet, so I took your advice. So looking at the estimated receipts, everything is categorized. Looking down where you have FY17, you have all your numbers there.
Yes.
Aptly written, right? So I guess I'm just trying to kind of go across your FY17 numbers. So your Chapter 70 number I'm certain these are all updated information compared to what the DOR currently has. That's ultimately the question. I'll stop asking every other question about libraries next, because they give you library funds. I don't know where that lives. And then the $10,000 school choice bit. So there's
I just know exactly what document you're looking at here.
DOR cherry sheet,
Okay, is this the?
unrestricted government aid. You look at the total
Okay,
numbers.
so the current years, the current
Yeah,
FY16
that's what I'm-
cherry sheet
so-
numbers.
so-
Okay, I understand, okay, yes.
So the numbers line up beautifully.
Yes.
I guess the question is going to be is just where is the library reported and where is that the school choice receiving tuition cash of 10 grand reported?
I'll have to, I would have to get back to you to, I will give you bad information if I if I don't review that and speak to the town accountant before I do so. But I'll be happy to get an email out to you tomorrow.
Yeah,
on
no
that.
worries,
Yeah.
it's not
No, I
necessarily,
know.
it's just
Yeah.
looking at the receipts, and I just figured since we're lumping them all in there, we're
Yeah.
not segregating school and whatnot, so I figured they'd all live there.
Okay, I understand the question, and we'll get you a response, but doesn't change the bottom line, but it's again, everybody ultimately is gonna be looking at that information, and it's heavily distributed, obviously, between the Department of Revenue, Department of Education, and,
Well, the reason why I asked the question is that it actually, it changes it by 30 grand. That's all, so it's 21 grand for libraries, which could be in the library's budget somewhere listed separately, which would be
Well,
weird, but.
you did well, yeah. It's, I mean, they get, the libraries do get a direct state aid amount.
Right.
In fact, you've probably heard the terminology, with, oftentimes our library director would have to go to library trustees and see if they can, if she can convince them to pay some fees, even this year, some staffing fees out of so-called state aid. So it's, I believe you'll find it's direct aid on the books for the library. It's not something that's appropriated, like most cherry sheet receipts, even chapter 70, this is all part of the big number we appropriate at town meeting, raise and appropriate. The state library funding is not to be raised and appropriated, it's a direct amount that's held by the library for their use. But I will confirm that, though, so to make sure there's no confusion. Now that I've cleared that up, I want to make sure.
Cindy?
Can I ask a question about fire?
Yes.
The budget you just gave us tonight, the proposed budget, hasn't taken anything out of the fire expenses, salaries or expense line items, and moved associated cost onto ambulance, has it?
Well, approximately $1 million of the fire budget, as you see it, is offset, will be offset by ambulance revolving fund, enterprise receipts. That will be in the motion, the budget motion. So that's, if you look at,
Well,
yeah, I know.
yeah, we've talked about moving forward, trying to work with the fire department to get a better
Maybe
Yeah.
a better layout of it.
a better layout
See,
and
it's-
breakdown. I
Right.
did talk to the chief about it. I think his goal was to have it, like, to do the work and study and have a real full
Yeah.
breakdown of it
Yeah.
for next year's budget.
Yeah, but,
Which is the question, because for next year, he doesn't know that he can sustain, because we don't know where we are. He sat and this year said he could sustain for fiscal 17, but he really doesn't know that he can sustain for 18, so we're just playing this game.
And
along
part
the
of that
way.
was the amount of time that he had the
It's-
numbers to look
right.
at.
It is a little bit early, and I forget who's been on the finance committee for how long, but I know Katie's new.
I'm new.
This current fiscal year, the fire chief hired additional, firefighter paramedics with the goal of maintaining running 2 ambulances 24/7. Right now, the main ambulance goes out of the central fire. And oftentimes, mutual aid would be required, or private ambulances to pick up any second runs. So the goal was, the math indicated that hiring additional firefighters, paramedics, would pay for themselves if we could keep the ambulance open 24/7, running 2 ambulances. So, in fairness, it's still pretty new to know if that's going to pay for itself and that's going to be sustainable.
And I
So
believe,
I think it's gonna
correct,
take a little more
either you
time
or
to know
Cindy
that.
can correct me if I'm wrong, but the additional that were added were at least partly on a grant.
They were in a grant, I
Correct,
think, through
correct.
half of the year this year.
Yeah, there was a,
Okay. And then,
Um,
but the overtime too,
yeah.
that was
Yeah,
there to do this.
reducing the overtime was a
Yeah,
component of
was
this.
a component, but the overtime, I think, unless I gotta look at the numbers a
Yeah.
little bit closer, but didn't the overtime go up like 30 or 40%?
Well, yeah, no.
Not 30 or 40%, but it
went up quite a
did
bit.
go up.
It went up a lot.
One of the problems, no, it's not a problem. Some of it is, it takes time, from the time you begin a program, you have to you have to hire or recruit, hire, train. It takes time to get people, same with police, to get them working. Just because you have approval and a funding source doesn't mean you can just do it. It takes a lot of time to get that going. It takes time to get the second ambulance running 24/7. So it is probably going to take a couple of years to know if this is really sustainable. So I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I'm actually just, for Ms. Whiting, to you. I translated the question saying, can you ask from your medical billing vendor for something called an activity summary report for fiscal year starting July 1/14 through the fiscal year to date current. And what that's going to provide to you is the total number of billable transports, the net charges, the total amount outstanding, and the actual collection rate. And that, in turn, will immediately tell you whether it's going to be self-sustaining.
So we should have known, or we should know.
That'll jump right out of the gate. It'll jump right out of the gate.
Some of the things that that affect all of this, though, obviously are firefighter benefits, injuries on duty, the overall staffing of the department, and the ebbs and flows of that obviously has an impact on this too. So, and obviously that's something that I would want the chief to speak directly to the finance committee about, to that level of questioning. But I do think this is a fairly new initiative. Whether or not this is going to, work, we don't know. The chief doesn't know, but I believe he has every reason to believe on paper, back to Sean's input, that it should work, but doesn't mean it will.
Well, and it doesn't mean it is.
Right, but in the interests of funding additional staffing and providing, more immediate service within the borders of Abington, obviously everybody believed it was worth exploring. So, and we're still in that stage right now. But that being said, next year's operations will be subsidized by approximately $1 million, a little over $1 million from the ambulance revolving fund. So,
And the thing I think to that specific point that we had talked about was more than just the calls and the activity, was a breakdown, like a fuller breakdown of treating the ambulance department as almost a separate department, and seeing the fire budget, the ambulance budget, and all of the costs, splitting them appropriately to where they met.
To that end, the DOR has a worksheet saying costing municipal services. They give 3 different examples. It's through DOR, local services, that says, hey, you're going to see what it costs the municipality, and they give very specific municipal run ambulance service. Among that, trash, and there's one other service. It literally is a worksheet that town accountants can go through. You fill in the blanks, and it gives you the answer at the bottom. That's on the DOR site. That answers the questions I think you're asking about as it relates to treating it as a separate piece.
One of the challenges, though, is it's one thing to say we need to break it into 2 separate departments on paper, but you have the same personnel doing the same,
Right.
doing both functions. So how do you, there's both an art and a science to determining
Yes.
what those numbers are.
Yep.
So.
And I think sort of the purpose, and Cindy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the purpose for wanting to look at that was, like we're saying right now, we're going to transfer $1 million from
Well, right, be
one.
part of the motion to fund the budget.
From one to
Right.
the other
Right.
for the purposes of the budget, and it's trying to not have to do transfers of that sort, but to try to figure out the more accurate balance of this is sustaining itself, this is what the town general fund
Right.
is funding,
Yes.
and
Yeah, no.
having
Is
those.
it working? Yeah,
Yeah.
is it really working?
Having
Right.
that information really clear,
Yeah.
so that we're not guessing about it.
Do you know what the
So.
balance in the ambulance reserve is left if we move $1 million?
I don't know if it's on there.
It's on this piece of paper here.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah,
is it-
second column,
Okay.
last one,
The,
ambulance fund balance.
Oh, no, that's actually, I want to propose source of transfer to the
Got it.
fire department this year. I have a lot of. Yeah, I would feel more, I mean, last year, we used about $965,000. I'm sure about $930,000. So it's not out of whack. I will be happy to forward you the actual balance as of the end of, is it May? End of April. I can get you I will be happy to
It is-
forward the
it
end
is
of
May,
end of
yes.
April actual balance,
And
but
it's not that I'm
it's
trying
a healthy
to-
fund.
yeah,
It's
and
a healthy
I'm not
fund,
trying
though.
to pick on one particular department. I think, like I said, the thing that really concerns me is we move $1 million to offset, but there's still money sitting here, if there is still money. And there's only, again, one department that's able to access that if they need that money, really. You can't just move it because we want to add police, or move it because it's the way it's set up. My understanding, and I may be way off base, but my understanding is as it is right now, only that money can be used only for fire department and fire or ambulance related.
That's correct.
Issues.
Right.
So there's only one department that has that ability to really kind of do what it wants, in a
For-
sense, within
For,
parameters. It's
for
got
that,
parameters.
for that particular fund. We
Yeah,
have the
particular
water,
fund.
the water department has their own.
Right, you're
money,
right.
the sewer has their
It's
own
not
coming
that
in,
it
and those are,
But the water department, I know, uses theirs as the sewer department, but the town as a whole, in some ways, I think benefits. It's like our tax money, it's coming back to us in a sense. I know the fire department is coming back, but it seems to me that there's only that one group that can really, I don't,
Well,
I just
I
I
have a
think-
hard
hesitate to
time.
kind of put departments
Yeah.
almost against each other.
I think that
know.
the
There's
challenge-
just something
But-
that just still bothers me about that one.
There's a long list of things that I think bother me about Massachusetts general finance laws. And
But it-
this
So my-
is a fairly straightforward, revolving / enterprise fund
Well, it
operation
only
where
has been for a few years,
where it's
so-
supposed to, where the fees and the revenue is supposed to offset the service directly, and that's what happens. The challenge is to try and document as much as possible that can be attributed, but that can be charged to, these types of revenues, and use them appropriately without, overcharging for a service either. The fund has to be able to remain healthy, so, and to the extent that that can be done effectively, it does take pressure off the general fund to help other departments. But I know, it's not like the police department can,
No,
you know,
it's just
uh,
a
The ambulance
different kind of fund. It's
or I'm
only
just
been
saying,
for
there
the
isn't a
last
fund
few
where
years.
the police department can go and charge
Buy a
fee for
cruiser.
service, and it's just, that's the way it is, and,
Because it didn't used to be that way. It's only been, I think, this way for what, 3 or 4 years?
I don't know.
It's changed.
It's
I don't
before my time.
I think it may have gone from a revolving fund to an enterprise fund, but effectively,
It used to be-
it's still been effectively the
Well,
same.
like the money would be there, and then if something was needed, it would be voted on town floor to take X amount, like, it's similar to what we're doing with that transfer and the money there, like, all right, well, the schools need $1 million, $100,000 or something, so they would always take from the enterprise, the ambulance
Right.
fund. That really funded an awful lot of things around the town, not just fire. And I think it's only been within the last
Well, a
3 or
revolving
4
fund
years.
wouldn't have been.
It wasn't a revolving
Oh,
fund, it was a
well.
different kind of a fund that they always would tap into ambulance funds, ambulance for. It went back a while ago, and it's only been in the last few years that it changed out.
That doesn't sound like questions I want to ask, because fees that are charged through an ambulance account, whether it's a revolving fund or an enterprise fund, have to be used for the services provided. That's the law. It's not like, and now, again, that can be used for the costs of services, personnel, benefits, the capital and other equipment. It's fairly broad in terms of its use in that regard, but it has to be for the service, specific service. So I'm not going to speak to things that may have happened before.
And I will say, one of the things that has come out of it is that we have been able to go from 5 firefighters on duty to 6, which is a
Which is
big,
great.
it's a great thing and a big
It's
safe,
great,
was a,
but when we
5
went
was a
from
big
4 to
safety
5,
concern.
Overtime was going down. Now that we've gone from 5 to 6, overtime is going up.
And that's why we need
so-
to make sure to look
Well, and once
carefully
again,
at the numbers.
overtime is dependent
So-
on more than just the number of budgeted positions. There's a lot of factors that go into what drives overtime, between activity, injuries on duty, and other things, you know. You can conceive of a lot more, but that's essentially, it's a little more complex than that. But, you know, but the goal is, you know, obviously to try and utilize that account as much as we can within the confines of the law, and maintain a healthy ambulance fund. It doesn't do any good to run a fund down to a point where it's not sustainable anymore either, because then we're just setting up the next budget deficit, which is not what we're trying to do either, so. But anyway, I will get the balance to you, well, through Matt, if
Yes.
it's, you know, or Deb, whatever you prefer. I don't know
Either
whatever
one.
you prefer, so, okay.
You both have my emails.
Yes, yes, so I mean, in terms of the actual budget document itself, that you won't see anything, you know, that's substantially different, because the last document that we looked at was a deficit. It's not like we've changed everything around, and what's offset that significantly, obviously, both as a combination of this House Ways and Means budget proposal, as well as, well, that's really what made a big difference in overcoming the paper deficit. So I will point out, though, that because it's tempting to look at, if you look at the bottom line of the actual budget document that provides for an 8.47% increase in town's expenditures this year, the vast majority of that is debt service, based upon the debt excluded school project. The debt service is included in the debt service budget, so I don't want people to look at that and be deceived that the town's spending another 8.5% over and above last year. You know, obviously, the great majority of that is the school project, construction project, so. So like I said, going forward in the next, you know, the next few days, never mind the next week, the goal is to try and see what other either efficiencies or whatever we can squeeze out of the operating budget as it exists in front of you, to be able to legitimately propose funding some collective bargaining agreements. So it's going to be busy, because obviously those have to be agreed to, approved by the Board of Selectmen, and then obviously this board has its say, as does town meeting, so a lot to do in a month. But there's no to the best of our knowledge, and from what we understand from our friends on Beacon Hill, there isn't there's no boondoggle coming from, you know, from the Senate budget that's going to substantially change the budget process here, so. So whatever we do has to come from the existing budget. So, very good, though, that we've got you know, the school administration, as always, has been fabulous in working as part of the financial team. And again, our collective bargaining units have been working hard and realize, you know, it's not like we're hiding money from people. It's, I wish I could do that. It's just no place to do it, you know that, so. So that's the only probable thing you might maybe coming back with at some point, is some further budget reductions that would ultimately be funding articles on the annual town meeting warrant. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Wiggy, did you have something? Okay.
And
Well, I think we definitely want to express our appreciation to the whole financial team. I know at the start of this process, things looked like it was going to take a lot of work to get here, and I think that you guys have put a lot of work in
well, you know,
to get it to this point.
you
at
start
least,
to
so.
measure your tenure and how many budgets you have left before you can retire. I mean, it's just it's just it must be nice to be in Dover for one budget season. Probably should be careful what I say, because I'm sure
Wellesley,
they-
Dover.
Yeah, it's like,
Weston.
Weston.
you know, it's difficult. It's difficult. So, and I don't mind saying it. One of the things that is a challenge in Abington is we hire people and other towns take them, whether it's, you know, particularly police officers. And I know that's true of a lot of school officials. I think some of the teaching staff too. You know, in my opinion, we're on the lower end of the marketplace for the position, for most of the positions, and, you know, so, you know, we can't change that based upon our financial construct, but obviously we can try to do our best, and I know the school administration, particularly Peter Schaefer, feels the same way. You know, you try to make it as good a working environment as you can, so that people have other reasons to stay than I could go down the street and make another X amount of dollars. Well, but we can't change that, and so we've got to be honest about it. And as much as we appreciate the people who provide services, and we do our best to try to make these things work. That's why I'm working hard to try to get make a fire and contract, clerical contract, and other contracts work for this fiscal year. So stay tuned. So,
Thank you, definitely.
and thank you.
So continuing on our agenda, we already discussed the fund transfer for the election budget. That will be done with the special town meeting, correct?
I'm sorry, I was just looking at something else.
Fund transfer for elections will be done
Yes,
with the
yes,
special.
correct. On the menu that is on the handout I gave you, is what the Article 3 of the special town meeting is going to look like.
Yep.
Correct, yes.
Elections is just over halfway down that, so. And I think for you, timeline for warrant articles.
I hope you have them Tuesday morning emailed to you.
Have them, we should meet to discuss them. We only have a few weeks left. Deb, what's the deadline that we have to?
10 days before that.
10 days before, so that would be,
And there's no surprises over and above. I mean, what's on the worksheets is essentially what you're looking at, and what the warrant is going to look like in terms of financial articles, but
I think if we can try to have anyone that we need to have come to a meeting 2 weeks from tonight.
you tell me
I think that's
whether it's
within-
something you need to discuss tonight or coordinate it through email what your schedule is, and we will get the people to your meeting.
I think
That's-
2 weeks from tonight, I think.
Okay. Okay.
I should probably do this. When's town meeting?
Town meeting is June 6th.
June 6th.
Monday.
Yes.
And we'll
Right.
meet, we'll.
Informed
for-
citizen.
For the, for the newer people, we meet at 6 o'clock,
Okay.
an hour before town meeting
6
starts.
o'clock on 6/6/16.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
It's a lot of sixes.
That's, yeah, it had a
Joke
bad-
I could make
it
right
had a
now.
bad- Had a
but,
bad ring to it for a
We're
sec
on
there. I was
camera
like,
and I'm
okay.
gonna pass it up.
Okay. I'm sorry, tonight is May 4th, correct? Okay.
It's Star Wars Day.
Did you look
It
at
is, yes.
May the fourth be good.
That's right.
What is that, May 18th?
Yes. May 18th we'll meet for going over warrant articles.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
And I think the only other item on our agenda of new business is our leadership positions, which I don't think you
I have
need to sit up here for.
complete faith in your ability to do that without me.
Need your Sean Hancock.
It's been so long, I forgot.
Oh, he was talking. What the heck?
All right. We have an empty secretary position. Not Deb's position, the on-board secretary, our backup for Deb when Deb is not available take minutes and send them out to the group. Rebecca Cantor was previously in that position, has moved out of town and been replaced on the board. Do we have any nominations for someone to become the new secretary of the board?
I feel like I'm being hazed and that's.
I nominate Katie.
So
I was going to do it
I'm
anyway.
just gonna volunteer, 'cause I feel
I
like
second
it's the
Katie's
elephant in the
self-nomination.
room.
Volunteering is
So,
tricky.
happy to do it. I don't
I-
know what it's going to entail, but I
I
feel
second
like-
that. Discussion? Discussion? All in
Who
favor?
was the,
Self-nominating.
I mean, I just feel like
and a
it's
second.
been the pressure since my first day,
I
so
don't
I'm more
think
than
you
happy to
can
do it.
nominate yourself, so
Okay,
don't
I
know.
nominate Katie.
Okay. Is there,
Second.
and we have a second.
And here I am, hazed and initiated into the finance committee.
Do
So
we have
you
any,
accept the
uh,
nomination?
I guess I
Okay.
am.
Do we have any other nominations? I'm gonna guess we do not, but I need to put it out there. All right, without other nominations, I think, is there any discussion? Katie, anything you wanna say,
No, I
campaign
just-
for this position,
nope.
you're unopposed?
We're-
or-
Yep, I'm happy to do it.
All right, all those in favor of Katie Comus becoming the new secretary of the board, raise your hand. Those opposed?
Very excited.
Abstaining? The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome. Moving along, liaison reports. No report from Pete, which is
School keeps going.
surprising. One of your one of your
Okay, here we
responsibilities
go.
as secretary will be before the meetings to check our mailbox, which is in the room over there
Okay.
for
Check
correspondence.
I think there's only a beacon or something.
Yeah, there might be a beacon in there. We'll check it for
Okay.
the next meeting.
Sure, which I'm not able to attend.
But you're not, we'll have
Yeah.
someone else check it for
Okay,
that one. But,
sure.
And we have minutes from our last meeting. Everyone get a chance to look over the minutes. Is there any discussion or a motion to be had on the minutes from the last meeting?
Move to accept.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion before we vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Opposed? Abstaining? Sean? The minutes are approved. As we discussed, we'll meet again in 2 weeks to go over warrant articles with the people responsible. We'll do budget discussion again at that time with anything new that comes up. We'll probably meet again the week after that and lead up to town meeting to make sure that there's nothing else that we need to go over, make sure that we have a budget that we're voting on, so. Is there anyone that feels we should meet again next week before that meeting in 2 weeks? Okay. Any other motions?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Sean, it's been a while. You usually like abstain.
I do usually, but you know what? I don't want to upset the apple cart too much. Out of town.